months, and I was like, this thing was desperate. When I quit my job, I was like, the first priority in April to the rebrand. We'd kicked off in like October, November. We'd cancelled it in December. In January, I was like, I've not got the energy. I'm going to park this. I think we restarted in June, and or like May, June, and again, it was a nightmare.
In that period of time, are sales still growing?
No, they're flat.
Flatlining.
They're flat. But actually, we've hired people, and we're now very close to losing money.
Right.
But because 2021 was so unbelievable, we basically, like, 2021 was like this, and then 2022 was like that. It was just so stagnant.
Okay.
Cost of living crisis, food prices went through the roof. So I'm like, I'm dealing with all this stuff. I've not really, like, I've built a bootstrap £1 million business. So I'm confident. I believe in myself. But still, I'm thinking, is this the right business? Food is long. Food is hassle. Should I be working on a tech product? Should I be working on this? And I'm just thinking, like, so many times I was thinking, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Welcome back to Prolific. Back in the studio, and whenever I'm here, you probably all know what it means. It means that I have someone very interesting that I've managed to coerce to come and speak to me despite their busy schedule. So the last few sort of conversations that I've had on Prolific have been with African tech founders, but obviously the whole concept of the idea of Prolific is how sort of special people do special things, and I think that goes across sort of different industries and background. And for that reason, he may not know this, but he's the first guest who kind of works outside of my space and outside of like the space of people that I've kind of spoken to. So I would like to introduce him as someone who is really shaking up not just foods delivery, but like the concept of like healthy meal prep, which I think it speaks to a lot of people who are quite ambitious and quite trying to do things in a sort of non-conventional way. Sometimes they don't have the best diet to match it. So someone very interesting that we're going to speak to today. And yeah, without further ado, Simmy Dhillon, welcome to Prolific.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming on. I know today you had loads going on. You don't have to talk about it, don't worry. But so I appreciate your time always. Whenever I have these conversations, if we have a relationship, it's easiest to go from what I remember of the person. So we both went to uni together, and what was interesting was from what I remember was you were the year below me, and we came across each other first on the football team. How you came across to me? Confident, which was good, intelligent, but there was a question that I really wanted to ask at the start, which was, why did you leave? And I think that will lead on to a lot more.
Yeah, so we obviously met at Warwick, where I was studying maths. Were you studying economics?
Accounting and finance.
Okay, yeah. And straight away, so when I was at school in sixth form, I went to a basic state school. So I was a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah.
And I just thought, this is going to be easy. I thought I was going to go to Cambridge and study maths there. Went to Warwick, which is obviously still very like tough for maths. Most people are like Cambridge, Oxford rejects anyway.
Yeah.
And I got there and I studied, and I was just like, I didn't have any friends on my course. All my friends pretty much were football. And the reason I was there, I thought uni was to get a good job. And I thought I'd probably end up in finance. But then when I got there, I realised that actually, there are people who are studying history, economics, whatever else, and going into finance. So why was I struggling through a course that I didn't actually enjoy? The only reason I enjoyed it before because I was good at it, and I got there and I wasn't as good at it. And I did persist. I stayed there for a whole term. I stayed there until January actually. I know a lot of people when they drop out, it's either end of year or the first couple of weeks.
Right.
But I did firm it, and I tried to for as long as possible.
Cool.
Until the point where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. It's just like it's not worth it.
Right.
But I think it was also quite a rational decision, because I think a lot of people they struggle and they're like, oh, I'm going to give up, or they'll just continue in something because they're too afraid to like drop out of it or quit. Like, you know, see a lot of people now, a lot of my friends my age now are in jobs that they hate, but they're not going to quit.
Same.
Yeah, and they're not going to quit. So it's either like people quit very early or not get started, or they'll just stay in it. And I thought, I'm going to give it a good go. I'm not just going to quit straight away. But also I'll know when the time is right to switch. And obviously it was a huge decision at the time. I thought about it a lot. But I've made a lot of decisions just from my gut, really. Just like intuitively, and it's always served me very well to get here. So yeah, it was ultimately like a kind of gut decision.
Did you not think to switch course and stay at Warwick, or were you like, I need to leave completely?
After like the first 2 weeks, I wasn't enjoying it straight away, like the course. And they said, oh, you can switch to economics straight away. And I was like, let me see how it goes.
Okay.
And then January went back and said, can I switch course? And they're like, it's too late now. What you can do is you can suspend, and then in September you can try and switch. But there's no guarantee you can do that, and you might have to come back and do maths again, which I wasn't prepared to do. The other option, if that's what I thought I could just do that. The other option was that I withdraw completely and then reapply for UCAS. So there was literally like a 5-day window where I think the UCAS deadline was on the Friday. It was the Sunday or Monday when I decided that I was definitely going to drop out. So I had 5 days to like call up school, and they're like, oh, they were shocked. Do you know what I mean? I had to go back through a whole, like, write a new personal statement. You know, people spend months doing that. Looking back on it, it's really not that deep, is it? If you got the grades, if you got the grades, you're fine. So you had to go through that process. And the funny thing is that, you know, in January, everyone's studying for exams. So I remember I was with people in the library. They were studying. I was doing my personal statement. And I thought as well with university, the best thing to do is go to the highest rank. I thought, like, you always want to go to the highest rank, not what you'd enjoy. I wasn't really even aware about like the kind of, I thought it was like A-levels. I thought, you know, it's the same across the board. But I remember being in the library, like, I think it was the Friday, the UCAS deadline day, or Thursday. And I, again, made my decisions by the league table. So I went to econ. Obviously, I couldn't apply to Oxford Cambridge then because it was too late, because their deadline is October or something. So I did like LSE, UCL, Warwick, Bath, because they were like the top ranked ones. And then I was like, I'm not going to go to the other one because it's too low ranked. And I was like, I think that Bristol was 8th and Nottingham was 9th. I was like, I'm not going to go there because I've already done really well, and like all my offers are going to be unconditional because of the grades. And I remember, I don't know, it was just a bit of like, I think, you know, because ultimately when you make those kind of decisions, you are embarrassed. So I think I was trying to like act up in front of my friends, and I was just like, I'm not going to go to one of these unis. But and I remember, just to show that I didn't care, or to show others that I didn't care that I was dropping out, I turned around to a stranger on the next table and I said, where do you reckon I should put as my 5th choice for uni? I'm dropping out and go back in. Like, literally never spoke to this guy, don't know what he looked like, literally won't know who he is.
One day he'll see you on social media, hey, that's Simmer guy.
Maybe. Or that crazy guy from uni. I was like, what uni would you rather go to if you knew back to uni? If you're going to switch uni, Bristol or Nottingham? And he looked at me, and I remember him saying, I don't remember what he looks like, but I rember exactly what he said. He was like, are you really going to put your future in the hands of a stranger? And I was like, it's fine, I'm not actually going there. Which one do you reckon it's about? And he's like, Bristol. So I put, it was like my extra choice. I was actually going to put 4 down, just I thought it's irrational, right? And then only over the next few months where, you know, I just literally had an admin job, like minimum wage admin, because I couldn't really have a gap year because you know, it's halfway through the year.
Exactly.
I was just reading lots during that time. I was just like kind of a little bit disappointed in myself, you know, because it feels like, you failed. And I was just like trying to read lots, and like I was like, when I go back to uni, I want to make sure I hit the ground running. And I was trying to be proactive and speak to different people, because from my school, I never really spoke to anyone who was older than me. It's like we didn't really have like alumni. We don't really have that kind of relationship. You speak to your mates, and that's it. So I never really spoke to people who had been at uni. I just assumed higher rank the better. But then, because obviously now I was going to be a year below, I started speaking to friends at Warwick whose friends had been at other unis. So someone was like, oh, my friend's at this uni, speak to him, speak to that person, and so on and so forth. And I remember speaking to someone who, one of my mates at Warwick had a lot of friends at Bristol, but I think they'd gone there just to kind of, for the lifestyle. That wasn't what I was about at all. But then I spoke to someone there, because like obviously I thought I wanted to go to finance, and this guy had like an internship or spring week at Goldman, which is obviously, you know, what everyone wants to do at that time. And I was like, oh, does the uni not matter? And he was like, honestly, it doesn't matter. Like, if they like you, as long as it's a half decent uni, it's fine. And then because I kind of didn't really enjoy Warwick as much, the social side, which I think was on me, probably a little bit as well. I thought, I'll go somewhere. I kind of realised that I've put all these London unis down, and I don't really want to study in London because I'm probably going to end up there afterwards. It's not really an experience. So ultimately, I decided on Bristol.
Interesting. It's in there you mentioned in your gap year how you started to read a lot of books.
Yeah.
And we weren't talking frequently, but we had each other on social media. And one of the conversations that we had before we ended up talking more regularly recently was you messaging one of my stories about books that I was reading. And it was interesting because I always found for myself, like, a lot of answers were kind of out there already. Even like the more sort of ones where you're going through an existential crisis. So it was interesting that you mentioned books. You grew up in Hitchin, right? The reason why I wanted to start with why you dropped out is because you see a lot of people who do big things, they make big pivots, and they trust their gut. Did you have any pressure from mum or dad?
Not at all. And I think I have a very like unique relationship with my parents. I think a lot of ethnic minorities, a lot of ethnic minorities, and especially like children of like immigrants or second gen immigrants, they've struggled and they've like firmed the shit jobs, basically, the minimum wage jobs to give you like the kids like safety and structure. So they're like, as long as we stay in these secure jobs, you've got a minimum blanket so that you've got no excuse to not study hard. You've got opportunities that we don't have. So I think that's where a lot of ethnic minorities in the UK, they're like, we have to do education. Like there's a lot of pressure. I'm quite fortunate. My parents they were very supportive, but like when I went to like my open days, I didn't really go to that many open days, and I was just like, my parents never basically had to worry about me. Even throughout, like, they didn't even used to go to parents' evening because they were like, I think we went to parents' evening in year 7, everyone was like, he's great. Right. So then I was just like, whenever they would come back to like, booking your parents' evening, the teachers would never pressure me because they're like, I have to worry about problem kids. Yes. And my parents would never be like, when's parents' evening? Whenever I got my grades, I never really told them because I was just like, it's calm. It's just like it's normal, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of like, like, I just had like very high standards and they were like, I don't need to worry about him. If ever like I needed a lift somewhere, like they give me a lift. It was kind of that kind of thing. So I remember when I dropped out, obviously initially I said to them, I'm not really enjoying it. An interesting thing as well was like I kind of felt, because I had no perception of what university should be like, I felt like I should go there and I should not come home. I don't know why. Right. I felt like I should not go home. I don't know why. But then when I was at Bristol, I'd go home regularly because intuitively I enjoyed it. But I felt for some reason that I shouldn't, if you know what I mean. I felt it was like, not being reliant on going home. Interesting. It was a bit of a weird thing.
Interesting. You feel like the culture at Warwick, or let's not say Warwick, the culture at maybe that type of uni was very much like separation, be independent as much as possible, as fast as possible.
Possibly. I think that was my assumption,
right?
And I think maybe, again, I've never really thought about this, but now deep down reflecting on that so long ago, I think it might have been that I was scared that if I went home I wouldn't want to go back
because the truth would hit you. I'm not enjoying it.
I'll be like, no, I can't. Like, if I was like, I can't make that decision to go, I have to stay here. I think that's literally why. I think the whole time, like the first term, no one came to visit me. I didn't want them to visit me. I think it was like me deep down knowing that if I went back, I wouldn't want to come back. And if someone came to visit me, I would be like, I fucking hate it. Do you know what I mean? Like, the funny thing is as well, so I went back over Christmas and like just smashed out revision. I was like, I'm going to make this happen. And I remember the day I got dropped back off at uni in early January, I think it must have been a Saturday. As soon as I saw the building, the accommodation, that my heart sunk.
Where were you? Roots?
No, the dead one. Westwood?
Roots would do that to you.
Yeah, no, it was Westwood.
It was Westwood?
Yeah.
Oh, first.
Still dead as well. But like, seeing the buildings, my heart sunk and I was just like, in that moment, I think I knew. The writing was on the wall. Do you know what I mean? But again, I firmed it. I got back. I smashed out revision. I went to the revision lecture on the Sunday. The next day, it must have been a Saturday. I got there. I stayed up till like midnight revising, which I would never do. I'd always be like, my deadline was always 9. Otherwise, I'm not doing any work after that. And the next day I went to that revision lecture, and I just couldn't do it. I just walked out, and I was like, I called my brother, and it was one of them ones where I called him to tell him, like to talk at him, not to like. And again, then the next day I was like, okay, cool. What are my steps I need to take? I'm worried about like student finance and UCAS and like the technicalities of, can I switch course to econ or do I have to withdraw? And I remember I didn't tell my parents until I'd like fully withdrawn, and I told them I need a lift. And coming back to your initial question, like, oh, what were your parents saying was their pressure? I remember it was actually Tashan who I spoke to.
Okay.
I think I stayed there for another week afterwards, just packing up and like saying bye to everyone. I remember seeing him in the gym, and he was like, oh, what are your parents saying about it? He was like, because I think like his perception again, like very much like, your parents are going to be fuming at you, they're going to be disappointed at you. And I was just like, they're calm. I didn't realise that other people's parents were not like that. And literally what I told my parents was like, I need a lift. And they're like, where do you need me to pick up? Like what time and stuff like that. And I think it was more so that my parents and my brother were a bit like shocked and worried in terms of like, he's always been the one, no problems, always been fine.
So this must mean something.
Yeah, and also like, it's normally a case of like, I'm the one helping them or telling them what to do. And then when I was struggling, I think they maybe felt bad that they couldn't help me. And it was one of the ones where I didn't want the help. I basically just needed to firm it and I needed that lesson.
And I also think in a way, they helped you by not doing what Tashan said. I have this thing of like, I think ambitious people should listen to themselves, because even when you were leaving, it's not like you left. You were pragmatic about it. What do I need to do next? Which means that you should, like people like you, when you have that thing, follow it. Follow it. So yeah.
And I think being given like the space to do it, I think a lot of the time, obviously I've only got my experience, but I don't even know. Like sometimes I don't know if I should even say this, but I always like, because obviously I haven't gone to a good school. I'm always just like, not skeptical, but if someone's privileged, I'm thinking to myself, I've kind of in a way got a chip on my shoulder in terms of like, okay, cool. I assume that most people who are doing well I'm competing with have some head start over me, and therefore like I'm like, we're competing for the same thing. So when I win, I've done it with less resources. Obviously I don't say that to them, but that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So, I feel like, but actually, although I'm saying to myself like my positive self-talk is kind of like, and now like when I'm competing from a business point of view, I'm literally like, no one has had less funding than us, because we started with literally £10 and reinvested it all, and I've taken no like debt, no loans, no investment. So I'm like, everyone else is more privileged than us because they're probably starting at an older age, like more connections.
Interesting.
So I'm like, if I beat any of you, like I shouldn't, but I'm gonna beat all of you. I think that kind of mindset, and I had that before as well to an extent.
We're definitely gonna come to Simmer, because that's where it's quite interesting as well, because I want to talk about the business of Simmer as well. The startup that I'm building, we took on no outside funding, but some of our main competitors VC money, so which is a bubble in itself. So before we hop into the business of Simmer, again, you make another big decision in my, let's say, 21-year-old brain. You had spring weeks and summer internships at Rothschild. These are, I spoke to someone when I was at Warwick. We both know him. I'll say who he is off camera. And we were at a meal. He was on the football team, and he was saying to me, I'm going to go work at this bank, and the starting salary is 50 grand. And his eyes were like, 50 grand. And he was like, realistically, technically, I should never make less than this. And I sat there and I started to question, like, but is it really what you want to do? But then I realized the background that we were coming from. Sometimes it's a matter of in a way, poverty alleviation. So coming from the background that you were from, again, another big decision to be like, no Rothschild, no Google. This is what I'm gonna do. So again, what forced your hand to kind of decline corporate?
I think similar to the uni thing, I was just like, I've done really well to get here. This is the conventional path. Like, we're basically told, try hard, like, learn, like, apply yourself, put in effort, and you're rewarded for your effort with scarce prizes, right? So, like, the harder you try in your A-levels, the scarcer the university place that you get. The harder you try to apply for a job, the scarcer job you get, like the investment banking roles. So getting those, you get that kind of like reward. But then I think a lot of people just don't question that because, and this is another thing I speak about where I speak to a few friends about it, but whilst in my head I'm like, other people are more privileged because they've had this schooling and stuff like that, in a way it's also a curse. I think if you've gone to a really good school and you have like educated parents, your chances of getting to the top 5-10% are so high. Like you basically can't not. Like, but your chances of getting, top 1%, top 0.1% are maybe lower because you're so afraid to deviate and take a risk. You're so afraid of what other people think. So I think that's why. Was it? I do this. I'm not going to go off on a tangent. What was your initial question?
Carry on, because the thing is, when you study a lot of successful people, the number one proponent of their success is determination.
Yeah.
And if you have those things behind you,
yeah.
Again, I come from a very similar background where like benefits, council housing, all of that, it does give you a different switch in your brain.
Yeah.
And I know if I were afforded all of those opportunities and things like that, I wouldn't think that way. The reason why I turned to entrepreneurship is because I saw my dad, who worked in the public sector, do everything correct in his career, get an MBA, and like that become redundant. And like that lose a mortgage, despite doing everything that you're meant to do.
Yeah.
So that's why I was saying, for you, like, in a way, I understand the risk that you took of turning down corporate.
Yeah.
For this path.
Yeah, your initial question about the corporate. So I think it was similar where when I was leaving Warwick, it was a hard decision because we're in an environment where like all of our friends are thinking, are you sure you can do that? That's a big mistake. But I was like, no, that's like intuitive. Like there was something drawing me to like, I have to make this decision. If I didn't make it, it wouldn't sit right with me. And then it was the same thing, as they were very similar decisions I made when I dropped out of university, which is ultimately when I decided I wasn't going to be going to like banking. And it was very similar because dropping out of university was January 2016.
Okay.
Then, Warwick was January 2016. January 2017 was basically when I started Simmer, actually, Rice and Spice.
Okay.
And when I started it was a year later.
Yep.
So again, it was very challenging. January's always like quite challenging periods. And then January 2018 was when it was like 2 years pretty much to the day.
Okay.
I'm now dropping out again.
Right.
But I just kind of felt like that's what I wanted. Like, a very hard decision. I thought about it a lot, but it just was it just felt right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, when I was working in banking, I'd worked to get that, I got the reward, but that was it. It was done. Like, I was like, I can't live like these man. Like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Every time when I was in there, I felt like, like it was kind of like everyone was an NPC. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone was, and especially the other interns. Like, some of them are nice, to be fair, and I get on with them. But ultimately, like, most of them still work in that industry,
right?
And most of them are just like, I need to work hard. I need to, kiss up to this person, that person. I was just like, I can't be doing that in my life. Like, I can't. And the only reason why I was able to take that decision is because I had Simmer on the side, and I knew it was never. Well, I said I knew it was never gonna, but it actually take off. Yeah, in my head, I didn't expect to take off. I wasn't expecting to, but I was just like, this brings me so much more satisfaction.
There you go.
It's so much more enjoyable. It's so much more rewarding. I can't be doing this. Let me give this a good go, knowing in my head that I'm probably going to end up going to another career like a consulting or a Google, which is still kind of the same, but not as bad as banking. And then when I was there, and I was like, okay, ultimately the only answer is your own business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very interesting. When I was in my grad role, that's when I built my first startup, which was Pamoja, was talent acquisition for African startups. And it gave me the same thing. I knew like, okay, you still need to make money, but this is the kind of work that you want to be doing. This is what fulfills you. And then prior to that at Warwick, building the Africa Summit, again, it was very entrepreneurial. So that's when I was like, that's the thing for me. So we're at Bristol, kind of, and I have a question around rice and spice. I start seeing this pop up everywhere, by the way, and I'm like, no, this was very, very cool. So you start this kind of prepping meals and getting like these footballers to like give some chunks and like all these different people taking on rice and spice. Why'd you change the name from rice and spice to Simmo?
It was an obvious decision that had to happen, because to a cold audience, like to people who had seen it, they're like, oh, this is sick, I love it, like, oh, I know the people behind it, it's a great story. To the people who knew about us, they loved it, but to reach a cold audience, it was just like, this looks horrendous, like the aesthetic was awful. Like the name didn't really make sense because people think, oh, is this a takeaway, what is it, do you know what I mean? And that's when I kind of had to learn more about branding. And even going through that process, I feel like, obviously we're all biased, but like I love the way I think about things. So when I'm going to branding, there are all of these people, these agencies who are like, we know branding, all this kind of stuff. We work with, you know, this brand, that brand, whatever. And I was thinking to myself, they're also like, you know how to do 7 out of 10 work and charge a lot for it. So we actually worked with an agency when we were going through this process. Like, I know that I don't know, like, what I don't know. I'm going to have to, like, bite the bullet and spend money and invest on an agency. And we spoke to lots of different people. And obviously, because it's my money, I'm like, okay, I'm not wasting money. We spoke with lots of different people. We got, like, a short list. I didn't really feel happy about any of them. But I thought, we need to do this because, you know, the longer we hadn't rebranded, we couldn't scale. Because to scale, you have to reach cold audiences and grow, which obviously we've now done. But at that time, we went with one, and I remember like just grilling the guy, and he must have just thought, "Oh, I ain't got time for this." Like, basically, he must have think like, "Oh, this broke brown kid, yeah, was looking for a deal. I was negotiating the thing," and he must have think this is long. But at the end of the day, money's money, and that's how they think. And I was like, being honest, how do you? And obviously, this guy was like, to be fair, I think he wasn't. I'm not sure where he was from, but he was like, he'd gone to like a top private school, and he was basically white, if you know what I mean. He was very well spoken, very like. Artsy and stuff,
almost condescending, almost.
A little, yeah. And I remember I was like, so why would we? I was like, how do you choose who you work with? Like, who do you like working with? And he's like, I shouldn't tell you this, but I think I'd just worn him down so much. I think he would have said this to someone else. And he was like, okay, we work with people for 2 reasons: 1, can they make us money? Or 2, can they make us famous? And I was thinking to myself, I don't think you believe that rice and spice is going to make you famous because look at it. Do you know what I mean? Like money. So you were just doing this for a quick bit of cash, but okay, cool. So we started, and after the first, like, there's like so many rounds throughout this rebrand. The work they gave us is just like, they presented to us, and I was like,
really?
Where's the next slide? Yeah. You know, I was like, where's the next part? And when they're telling you how much this costs, I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
And did you pay that? So, or you had to pay like half or something.
So he basically said, we've done 2 stages. And I was like, you're surely not, like, so I called him, and it was at Christmas, December 2021.
Okay.
December 2021. Yes, I quit Google in April. We were working this rebrand. We started it in December 2021. And after that, I was just like, I'm so stressed. Like, I need this rebrand to take off. And luckily I had just through LinkedIn, some woman was unbelievable. She reached out to me, she's like, I love what you're doing. Let me help you for free. And I was like, okay, cool. Thank you very much. And she was so helpful. And she jumped in, and she was just like, she works in an agency, but not like a design agency. And she was just like, these guys are awful. Like, you've got to get rid of them. But I'm so glad that I had someone experienced, someone credible, someone believable who said that, and I was like, that's what I wanted to say, but I didn't kind of have the confidence to say it at that point because I was inexperienced, and I like, you know, so much of the time in business, just confidence gets you so far. And a lot of people are, and I always say this, I'm very skeptical. A lot of people are stealing a living. And so many of these people, it's just like,
I used to work in an industry that does that, consulting.
And I'm so glad that she said that and gave me the confidence to do it. So yeah, we got rid of them, and I was just like, I was so like, I was waiting for this rebrand so much,
Right.
and it will become clear why in a bit, and I was holding back so much because I was like, I can't invest into Rice and Spice. I need to invest in the new brand because it's more scalable, and it was just such a blow, and I was just like, I was like on empty, and at these times I was actually just like, should I have quit my job? Like I was just a bit like, I would never say like depressed or something. I was just like, just low energy. You're just like, is it?
You start to question a lot of things.
You're not excited to start working. You're like, you're working, and you're just like, you don't want to do anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're just a bit.
What is this for?
Yeah,
What am I doing?
you're losing purpose. You're losing motivation. And this is in December, and obviously everyone else is celebrating Christmas. I'm like, I can't celebrate.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? I can't be celebrating this. So then we go to another tough January,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, oh fuck, sales are falling. We just need to grind this out. I don't have time to work on this rebrand, so we shelved it for like 6 months. And I was like, this thing was desperate. When I quit my job, I was like, the first priority in April to this rebrand. We'd kicked off in like October, November. We'd cancelled it in December. In January, I was like, I've not got the energy. I'm going to park this. I think we restarted in June, or like May, June, and again, it was a nightmare.
In that period of time, are sales still growing?
No, they're flat.
Flatlining.
They're flat. But actually, we've hired people, and we're now very close to losing money.
Right.
But because 2021 was so unbelievable, we basically like 2021 was like this, and then 2022 was like that. It was it was just so stagnant.
Okay.
Cost of living crisis, food prices went through the roof.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm dealing with all this stuff. I've not really I've built a bootstrap £1 million business. I'm confident. I believe in myself, but still, I'm thinking, is this the right business? Food is long. Food is hassle. Oh, should I be working on a tech product? Should I be working on this? And I'm just thinking, like, so many times I was thinking, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Do you know what I mean? But again, it's hard to quit. Like, it's actually difficult to quit. So yeah, it got to the point, and I was just like, oh fuck, we need this rebrand to happen. So we started working with these two freelancers who again sold us to the world and delivered nothing.
Damn.
Actually ended up sacking one of them and then getting it done with the other one. And it's funny because afterwards everyone's like, your brand's sick, how did you do it? I'm going for a rebrand, can you recommend someone? I was like, I wish I could recommend someone. I can't. So yeah, it was mad. But basically in September 22 we launched the rebrand, and it was pretty much all or nothing in terms of, obviously we still got business, it's still going fine, but it's all or nothing in terms of like
scalability at least.
And is this something that I want to work with for the next 5 years, or do I need to go and find something better? Because I can't, like, for valuing your time, I'm not staying working on something that's stagnant. And obviously we're at a low baseline, or relatively low baseline, and the sales literally doubled in a week.
Wow.
It's not just because of the rebrand, it's because we were holding back so much. So I was like, okay, now I've got this, everything can go. Like, I put everything into that.
Right.
It's like let's say you're playing football and you got one last game. You're injured. You take the injections. You know what I mean? Like, strap up, play this one last game, give it everything. And after that, the momentum we've literally not looked back since that point.
Wow. That's crazy. You said a ton of things. One of the things that I was going to ask you about was the type of business. Okay, I'm not going to say you chose this type of business. The type of business that you were called to build. Very difficult.
Yeah.
Like restaurant businesses in America, you know the stat, like 3 years they're out of business.
Yeah.
This is like maybe today's version of having a restaurant business, like food delivery, food prep, whatever.
Yeah.
You're working in an industry, you're building something which is so prone to like opinion, and a bad opinion from a big person can damage a lot. How do you process that?
I think a lot about football. Yeah. Okay. And obviously with my brother, who is a pro, we think about this a lot, and like him playing like semi-pro, and like you get people like swearing at you, get people like slating you all the time.
Very subjective. Yeah.
It's all opinions anyway, and often it's like, it's way less meritocratic, right, than entrepreneurship. Like, you could be unbelievable, you could play well, but managers don't like you.
You're done.
And so I feel like at the end of the day, we're quite rational people, we're quite pragmatic. So it's a case of, okay, someone don't like your food, calm. I don't mind. You're one person. I'll go serve someone else.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I'm very much of the opinion of that opinion. So now, like, everyone's like, oh, I love your food. Everyone's so, like, because they see everyone else loves it. So now, like, obviously in 2024, everyone loves it. Oh, you still get some people who don't, but the majority of people, and everyone's like, yeah, and it's great. Back then, it wasn't the case, right? You're always going to get people, and often it's the people, like, not close to you, but I wouldn't say close as in, like, your closest friends, but people who are close in terms of distance.
Right.
Your flatmates, your course mates, your schoolmates, your people who they're not actually your mates, but you know who are close to you.
Yeah.
They're always gonna say they're the biggest haters. Do you know what I mean? Like when you start, they're the biggest haters because I think in a way it's a bit like, you know, it's quite British as well. If someone like, you know, tall poppy, like everyone wants to pull you back down. I think honestly, you probably, obviously we weren't at work together for a long time, but you probably noticed that like I'm quite to myself, where like, oh, I'll chat to anyone, I'll be friends with anyone, but like a lot of people, even at school, everyone has their friends group. I'll just drift in and out everywhere. Yes. And I remember even like, again, you know, when you're an entrepreneur when you're younger, obviously you're selling sweets on the playground. Yeah. But for that reason, I would chat to, you know, the set 1 kids, the set 7 kids, you know, the rugby lads, the football lads, you know, the emo kids, everyone. I'll chat to them because I'm like, you're a customer. Yeah. So I've held that still, and also I'm like, I'm not too worried about people's opinions because at the end of the day, obviously I've got really close friends now, but even today, my close friends are kind of like, they're from different friends groups. Okay. So again, it doesn't make me like too worried about the opinion of one group. Okay. And I'm never too worried about what someone's going to say about that person. Okay. And even now, I can just be honest and speak to you because I'm like, well, yes, we'll probably have mutual friends, but they're not that close. It's interesting,
and I have the book here. I'll show you it after. It's Nassim Taleb, the academic, but he speaks about anti-fragility. Yeah. It's like how you can benefit from chaos and things like that. Your approach is very anti-fragile, which means that you're not just shock absorbent, but like you almost can benefit from stress. Yeah. I say that because it's very counterintuitive in your business that you wouldn't be fazed by opinion. If I was starting your business, I would be like crying. If someone was like, I hate your meals, whatever. Yeah. Whereas it's quite, and I think that actually gives you a sense of sustainability. Yeah. How important is building a core, like, a core group of people who continue, like, subscriptions or this type of thing? How important is it?
About customers?
Yes.
Obviously, like, incredibly important. Like, if you don't have, at the end of the day, like, you know how, you know, we spoke about like VC-backed business, all these kind of businesses, right? You will see people go out and raise like stupid amounts of money, spend it all on like a fancy rebrand. They'll go hire out like a fancy studio, spend thousands on like the packaging, all this kind of stuff. And where has it got them? Most of them go bust in like 5-6 months, whatever, or like a couple of years or whatever it may be. And the fact is that we've had none of that investment, got to over £1 million in revenue, recurring revenue, with like plastic containers and a sticky label on them. Do you know what I mean? With plain brown boxes with a sticker on them, something that I've designed on Canva. And then I was like, okay, so we get here, like, it's that kind of mindset of like, you know, with football or with gym or with whatever, like, let's say you get really good results, but with terrible resources. Now imagine if you give this some resources, you're going to fly. Yes. Yeah. It's like we were operating wearing like a weighted vest. Yes. Take it off. Yes. And everything is going to feel so easy. That's basically what's happened with Sim in the last 2 years. Right. We did the rebrand, and now we can push stuff. Like, we've got enough money to reinvest where we can.
So, speaking of taking the vest off as well, you've got to this stage. At this point, share what you want to share. Don't share what you don't want to share. How do you look at product development at this point?
So initially, we're 7 years in, we're 7.5, 7 1/3. For the first 5.5 years, I was like, I had to do everything.
Yeah, cook.
Everything. And even when we hired chefs and I didn't physically have to be there, I would be so involved in all the menu development. I was like, we need a dish like this, we need a dish like that. I need to taste every single thing to go on. And even though they were great chefs, it's just like, it's so like different. Like, you know how, 1, it's meal prep, 2, it's, you know, it's direct to consumer. It's different to like, you're hiring these like restaurant chefs where, you know, occasionally it can be quite difficult to deal with. So I felt I had to be really close to it. It was probably only 18 months ago or so, where we hired an unbelievable chef.
Right.
And now I'm just like, okay, cool. Like, he's gained my trust.
Yes.
And he knows what's good. He knows what our customers like. He's been here for long enough.
Right.
There's already a base for him to see, a catalogue of recipes.
Okay.
Now he can, like...
Interesting.
Like, develop, and I'll be like, sign off, yeah, cool, done.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you ever think that you'd be involved in so much? Corporate jobs have you very specialised,
Yeah.
whereas entrepreneurship's not. I just wrote a little piece about the boring stuff, and it actually spoke. One of the case studies I took was the founders of DoorDash in America, and they basically did every single facet of the business themselves. And I suppose because they did that, they knew where optimizations were required.
Yeah.
So did you ever see yourself doing every part of, like, doing that in the past, and what has it done for you now that you've done everything?
Yeah, I think, like, now I feel like I have I'm not afraid of anything. Okay. I'm not afraid of any task. I've got confidence that I'll be able to do anything or understand it. I feel very well rounded. I feel like, like, when I'm, again, to use a football analogy, it's like, if you put me in any position now for Simmer, I'll be able to do a good job. Yeah. And we're going to win.
Right.
And I feel like when I speak to friends who are working at, they're working there like a big four firm, they've been there for like 5 years. They're so like niche and siloed.
Yes.
Like, you can't leave.
Yes,
the only way you can leave is go to another firm and just the same thing, or you start from zero.
Yeah. And by the way, something that we've both learned is, and this is something that entrepreneurship teaches you, which I'm a salesperson. I'm a go-to-market person. If you can understand distribution, you are in a very, very strong position. So I say that to say, like, if Simmer went to zero today, you would know how to build a product and sell.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the time that I spent in corporate and the time that I spent in the public sector, I never knew how to sell.
Yeah.
So I think what you have now is invaluable. Your mind is so much more broad about product positioning, about distribution, about all of these kind of things, which is valuable anywhere.
Yeah. I think it is interesting where, like, you start, like, it's so cliche, but like selling on the playground.
Yeah.
Like, you have to sell to every type of person, and it's mad how much that teaches you. And now it's like, obviously I don't need to. It's great being in a position where you don't have to sell.
Yes.
You're not desperate to sell to hit your targets, whatever. And also it's a product that you really believe in. And it's like, I think I could sell Simmer to, someone from the royal family.
Right.
But I could also sell Simmer to someone in a like housing estate. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I could find a way to sell it to both of those people and everyone in between.
Yeah.
But I think that comes from, like, one, just having the experience and serving so many different people. But two, like, having the confidence to be able to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to talk about this bit as well.
Yeah.
But I saw you spent some time in Asia. Was it China?
Yeah, all over. Yeah.
What were you in search of when you were there, and what did you learn?
So the first time is another interesting thing. So growing up, even now, like, my dad's passport is out of date. And I'm like, can you renew that so I can take you on holiday?
Right.
He's like, I've never liked going on holiday because whenever I've gone on holiday in the past, I've always been skint. So when I go there and I'm trying not to spend money, and it's just like he got such that mindset. Yeah. But growing up, like, holidays were dead. Like, me and Jay, like, hated going on holiday because we were just like, we're going on holiday, we can't afford it, and we're going to the worst places. Like, we might as well just keep the money and stay at home. And it wasn't until I got to, even when I was in sixth form, my mates were going on their lads' holidays, I was like, it's a waste of money. Right. I'll save the money. Right. Like, never really went on holiday. And then one of our close friends he was a bit more well off, like middle class. His dad was a builder, but like a well off, like they were doing well for themselves. And he'd always go on Maddie's Farm on holidays, and he was like, guys, like, why don't we go somewhere? And this when I dropped out of Warwick.
Right.
Me, Jay, and our friend went to America.
Okay.
And it's like our first time going somewhere, and it was like, not going on like a family holiday, just go with your mates. And even though it's America, it's not very cultured. It was an amazing experience. We went there for like 3 weeks. We travelled all over. And after that, I was like, traveling's quite cool. Then when I got to uni, and you meet, more middle class people, and they teach you about different things, right? And one of my friends, who's going to do year abroad in Australia. So I was like, now again I've taken a year off to work on the business, and I was reading the 4 Hour Work Week, which I absolutely love. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And this was pre-COVID. I'm like, I've got a meal prep business, like a business that you shouldn't be able to work remotely with.
Yeah.
And I'm going to work remotely in Asia.
Right.
So that's the first time I went to Asia when I was like 21 and worked remotely.
Oh.
You know, the typical Southeast Asia, went to Bali and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And after that, I was like, man, the world is such a big place. I want to see more of it. So since then, I've consistently gone for prolonged periods of travel / remote work, because I guess kind of thing that I talk about on LinkedIn, but like, you know, most people, they're going to think doing well means getting a nice house, you know, sending their kids to a nice school, getting a nice job, getting a promotion so they can tell their mates and going to a fancy meal. But do they actually enjoy that stuff?
Yeah.
I personally wouldn't. And then they'll go on the 1-2 week holidays. They're going to have to get back because their boss is calling them back. And maybe when they're like 60, they can retire and go and travel a bit more. I was like,
no optionality really.
Yeah, I'm like,
freedom. How
unbelievable is it that I can decide? And like, again, it's one of those ones where I spoke to my mate the other day, like literally, I was catching up with him and I was like, do you know what? In September, I haven't even told my parents, I haven't told my mates this. In September, I think I'm going to go to Colombia for a few weeks.
Right.
And then I'm going to go to Brazil. And then I might go to Argentina.
Right.
I might or might not do it, but knowing me, I probably will.
Yeah.
And it's the same way that when I went to China, that wasn't decided, wasn't booked until like early March.
Right.
And then I flew a couple of weeks later.
Interesting.
And I just booked flights as I went. And then, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, you come back to the initial question, what is the purpose? The purpose is that I want to travel.
Yeah.
Obviously, I can then say, well, I'm going to find recipes here.
Yeah.
I'm going to meet new people here. I'm going to work remotely here.
Yeah.
And
you get to also see how things are done in a different way.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I wrote, again, another podcast episode called Cows versus Lions, and it actually speaks about, it's Naval Ravikant who basically talks about, you know, how if you're a cow, the old world of work is you graze all day, whereas a lion hunts and then they rest. And a few examples I used in there was Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest people in America who ever lived. He used to spend about 2/3 of his year traveling.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, capitalism, for many reasons, is not great. But one of the things it's done is detach us from sort of having to. So I think the rejuvenation that you'll get from that is also amazing. I've got like 2 more things to ask you about. £1 million recurring revenue now. When I ask you how does it feel, I'm not necessarily talking about the number, because business people, it's a number, right?
Yeah.
But it's a broad question, but answer it how you want. How do you program that in your head, that figure?
I think I'm quite desensitized to it. So like one of my close mates who I speak to regularly, who's also doing quite well, like he's always like, "Oh, bro, we've got to celebrate this," and like I feel like I just don't. It's just like the next one, the next one, the next one, and I'm aware that I don't celebrate it, and I'm aware that I should celebrate it. Then I'm also just like, I hate like people who they know they should do something, they don't do it, and that's kind of what I'm doing. But
why aren't you doing it?
I don't know, like, it's like, I said this to someone the other day, what do I intrinsically enjoy? I was speaking to actually my barber, who's like, he's like 19, and I love speaking to him because he's quite mouldable, right?
Okay.
And I can hopefully, like, give him a whole different, like, perspective. And I was like, do you know what? Obviously played in like quite a few summer tournaments and like creative football tournaments, and I just love playing football. And after Warwick, I stopped playing football for like 6 years. And it just like, I was like, I don't enjoy it, it's not fun. And I started playing, and it's just so fun. Yeah. And the other day, like, we got, because our parents are retired, or we retired our parents, we got them out on a Friday, me and Jay and like some of our mates, just playing football, running around outside, like, we went for food afterwards. It's just such a fun day. Such a nice, like, nourishing day. Yeah. And it's not like, you know, when people go out and like, I think a lot of people, like, if I said to, you know, you pick someone off the street, I was like, you can pick, what is it? It's Wednesday, right? Tomorrow's a Thursday, you can do whatever you want, anywhere in the world, and someone will pay for it. What would you do? Most people would be like, oh, put me in New York, put me in Ibiza, put me in Dubai, take me to the Shard, let me do this, let me do that. Maybe it's now speaking from a position of like, you know, financial freedom, whatever, I would say have a football tournament where, you know, we've got all my mates there, it's sunny, but not too sunny, we've got great food, do you know what I mean? Like, everyone's happy, everyone's enjoying themselves. I don't think you can get much better than that. Like, you know, that human connection, the exercise from it, you know, the feeling of it, you know, the ups and the downs of it. Oh, give me that any day.
It's such a beautiful thing to go through the process of, okay, you're still building it, but like, you learn so much about life because first of all, you had to pay for freedom.
Yeah.
In pain, to build what you're building. And then when you you're not quite over the hill, but when you're on your way, that you start to learn, like, I didn't do this for the figure. I did it for the process of being able to express who I am, what I want to give to the world, what I think is missing, my artistic expression. And then you value things very, very, very clearly that you can't sort of put a number on. So it's very interesting hearing you express that. What's next for Simmer?
This is the thing that everyone says to me, and it's a very boring answer. Just carry on scaling. And it's as simple as that. Like, back in the day, even when we were tiny, everyone's like, what's next? You know, open a restaurant, you can do this. I'm just going to carry on scaling. It's the boring thing, but it's just like, it's the thing that's going to have most impact on other people. It's the thing that's going to have most impact on the bottom line for the business. It's the thing that's going to build most defensibility. Just keep on scaling.
Amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be crazy, but, you know, like, continuing at the rate we are. I say that, obviously we're growing like faster than most people, but I still think it's in a sustainable way because it's profitable. It's not like we're just taking on lots of money and it's all profitable. It's working well. I think one of the biggest actual questions in terms of what's next for Simmer is, what do I want?
Yes.
And then that kind of informs where the business goes.
Amazing.
More scaling at the moment.
Amazing. My last question is, what are you reading, or what have you recently read that kind of made an impact on you?
This would be an interesting one. So when, obviously, I must have messaged you a few years ago, and when I was young, I was so obsessed with reading and learning, and I felt like I had so much, you know, it's like the marginal return was so high. Every book I read, I would learn lots. And then I got to a stage where I read so much. I think during that year I took off of university at Bristol, I read a book a week, and I was like, I'd pick up the book and, very rational, look at the number of pages, divide it by 7. I have to read this many pages a day. So I picked up Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom, 750 pages or whatever. I was like, every day I'm going to have to read, 101 pages. And I did it. And I got to the end of the year, and I was so glad that I did it. I learnt so much. And I'm like, I think I got to a point where I'm like, I don't need to learn anymore. I need to execute.
Yes.
And then I got to the point now where I'm just like, I was like, I don't have time to read. And reading before bed, like, negatively impacted my sleep.
Interesting. Got your brain ticking again.
Like, I used to be like, how am I going to sleep better? Read before bed, journal. I kind of just stopped doing those things. And like, me, I feel bad doing that. I'm like, oh no, these are good habits. I should do them more. But I'm like, well, I'm sleeping better than ever.
Yeah.
And also, like, in terms of listening to podcasts, I now like, cause I like walking. I like getting out, and, you know, there's something I do, like, that's a habit that, like, it's a non-negotiable for me. And there I try and listen to stuff. But now I've got so many credits that I should cancel my Audible, but I can't find anything that's worth my time listening to. Because I think a lot of it's just regurgitated and stuff like that. You know, like, obviously I love Noel, and I would re-listen. You know, like Noel says, like, I can't remember, I haven't listened to it in a while, but he's like, you know, you should just reread the same books as opposed to just trying to read new things for the sake of it. So that's what I'll do. Sometimes I'll reread books. But being completely honest, there's a point where I was like, as a kid, I never read Harry Potter. So at the age of 25, I started reading Harry Potter.
Perfect.
And it's just stuff like that. I was like, oh, it's fun to read before bed. And then, like, recently, I went for a stage where I just didn't like football. I was like, it's inefficient, Liverpool is shit, I'm not watching football anymore. I stopped playing football. And now, obviously, I'm getting a bit more into it. But, like, I'll just literally listen to, there's a podcast, which is the most, like, man in the pub podcast ever. It's like Under the Cosh. They interview, like, non-league footballers and, like, not famous footballers. I should listen to it. And I used to listen to everything on ×2. Everything I listen to ×2. When I listen to that, I'm like, I don't want this to end. I'll listen to it on 1.2.
Not even 1.2.
It sounds like they're trying to pick someone. But yeah, like, to be honest,
there's a lesson in that though. Switching off. As well. And Naval, which is he's simple. I love people who say complex things very simply.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's it. So I suppose this I want to sort of close by saying um when you sat down, I kind of told you a little bit about Prolific and why,
Mhm.
but like I do Prolific really for two reasons. One, for myself, to be able to um really comprehend when people do things that I admire, um, what it is that they were doing. So whether it's Steve Jobs and reducing his product line at Apple to show focus, or Kobe Bryant reading a referee's handbook to gain an edge. I love those things and I love writing about them. But then the other half of it is because I get to sit with people like you and I get to pick your brain about how and why you've gone about doing what you do. So, congratulations on the Simmer. I hope things continue to scale up and up, not least because we kind of come from the same background, but also because you're doing it without taking on any money. So that's always another fu. So all the best of that, and that's all from this week. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I've got loads more content which will be coming out, and this is Simmy Dhillon, and he's prolific. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.